Welcome to Soapbox After Dark. I am your host, Jamarl Thomas. I call it Soapbox After Dark just because it is after dark, at which point I am doing the soapbox. Let's do the news. Like I said, I had a list of shows that I wanted to get through today, and that list is not complete, so I want to finish my list. So I have maybe 3 or 4 more shows. I may not get to all of them tonight, but I am going to damn sure try. Let's jump into Brexit. Big events are taking place in the UK. Just as in the same way that the Mueller case kind of overshadowed the press, Brexit is still continuing to overshadow what is taking place in the UK. But this has been sharpened because we're at the point where Britain is supposed to leave on the 29th. Now this has been extended, but this has been extended because they could not come to some consensus on some level of Brexit, and the Prime Minister continuously trying to push her plan through wasn't working. The Prime Minister wanted to put her plan up for a 3rd time. Burkow comes up and says, no go. The Prime Minister is not going to continuously put the same plan up over and over and over again without substantial changes being into the plan. And not just that, the Prime Minister didn't have the votes to bring the plan up either way. Even if she did bring them, meaning even if she could, she didn't have the votes to do it. This is a pickle. Now, you can imagine from the Prime Minister's point of view, this is extraordinarily frustrating. Now, there's another story tangential to the story, but I'm going to do this one first, and then I'll push this one up, the next one up immediately after. So, pursuant to this, the Prime Minister is bad at political calculus. Now, what I mean by this, she's taken 2 extraordinarily big gambles. I'm pretty sure there were more. But one extraordinarily big one that she took early on that people may have forgotten is the snap election that Theresa May called with this idea that she was going to break the back of Labour. It's like this image of Bane taking Batman over his back. But that didn't happen. In fact, the opposite happened. She loses her majority, in which case she's in a minority government propped up by the DUP. A group that for the most part is now the tail wagging the dog because DUP will determine whether or not the government collapses. Theresa May is frustrated. She's somewhat of an embarrassment. She's roundly considered to be incompetent, whether that's true or not. It does seem that she's bungled this Brexit stuff. The second big one was the recent one, or let's say the latest political calculus to go awry, is what took place a few days ago. Frustrated, annoyed, the European leaders making fun of her, annoyed at her, essentially their rage spilling out onto her. And a public at home that's pissed off. Everybody in this process is annoyed and pissed off because they can't get anything through in the process. It's just frustration. And the Prime Minister trying to just push her plan through over and over again clearly is not necessarily what's making it work. Something needs to change here. Something needs to take place. So the Prime Minister takes a political gamble. She goes on, she goes into a press conference and she tells the British public, I understand your anger. I too am annoyed by this process. And I see, essentially what's been taking place here. I'm the Prime Minister. This is not my fault, however. This is those MPs. I understand your anger, and those MPs are the problem, the squabbling. Now, what she's really saying here is just, they don't pass my plan. They won't pass my plan. Brexit can be over with, but they won't pass my plan. I'm going to let you hear this, but this had a certain political effect, and this boomeranged poorly. This boomeranged badly, let's say it that way. Let's hear Theresa May blame Parliament for the problems associated with her Brexit bill.
Have passed since the public voted to leave the European Union. It was the biggest democratic exercise in our country's history. I came to office on a promise to deliver on that verdict. In March 2017, I triggered the Article 50 process for the UK to exit the EU, and Parliament supported it overwhelmingly. 2 years on, MPs have been unable to agree on a way to implement the UK's withdrawal. As a result, we will now not leave on time with a deal on the 29th of March. This delay is a matter of great personal regret for me. And of this I am absolutely sure you, the public, have had enough. You're tired of the infighting. You're tired of the political games and the arcane procedural rows. Tired of MPs talking about nothing else but Brexit when you have real concerns about our children's schools, our National Health Service, knife crime. You want this stage of the Brexit process to be over and done with. I agree. I am on your side. It is now time for MPs to decide. So today I have written to Donald Tusk, the President of the European...
I am on your side. These MPs are just squabbling, and they're not getting it done. They're not getting the Brexit done. And not just not getting the Brexit done. I know you're sick of Brexit, and there are other things that we need to be attending to. Now, it's the government that sets the agenda, so let's be very clear. It's not the backbenchers. It's not Parliament. It is the government that sets the agenda. So if this government negotiated this Brexit, and this government decided in the way in which it was going to present this Brexit to Parliament to be voted on, the government made these decisions. So this idea that it's entirely Parliament's fault, not so much. Also, understand what's taking place here from the standpoint of politics. Theresa May is trying to make a distinction with her audience by articulating righteous indignation from the British public itself, that this somehow makes her one with the public. Like, she exceeds the role of the Prime Minister into this kind of phantasmological state that she is above the politics of it all, that she is at one with the public, and in being at one with the public, she embodies their rage and anger as if she's the avatar of the public's will. But that's not really true. I mean, this is the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister is the one that is guiding and leading this Brexit. For the flaws or the defects, all of those things, for the most part, are going to fall on the shoulder of the Prime Minister. The buck stops here, right? Not just the buck stops here. You're also in this kind of precarious situation where the anger that's been directed from the public towards the MPs, because they're sick of this Brexit, because they're tired of this process, because passions are inflamed in regards to the people who want to stay versus the people who want to leave, that taking the position that it is Parliament's fault. Members of Parliament were concerned by this. Now, whether they were concerned by this just purely from the politics of it, meaning they were just making hay of it, or whether they were actually concerned because it was actually threats, death threats leveled at parliamentarians, this didn't go over well. This felt like the Prime Minister was essentially blaming Parliament for all of the failures of the Brexit process. In some cases, the people were scared already from what their constituents were kind of leveling at them, and they felt like this was somewhat piling on and added a certain dangerous quality to it, that the Prime Minister was going to take this position. The Prime Minister is not separate and distinct, and the Prime Minister is not necessarily the avatar of the public's will, seeing as the public is not on board for her Brexit. They don't particularly like her Brexit. It's not that they want to leave without a deal, but they don't particularly like her deal either. Also, the Prime Minister needs these people, meaning if she has any chance of getting any deal through, the same people that she's just antagonized are the people that she actually needs to vote on her behalf. The fact of the matter is, this kind of trying to bring her vote back for a third vote, she does not have the votes. The vote, once again, was postponed. And what Theresa May continued to say there is that she sent a letter to Tusk asking him for an extension of Brexit. They said they would give her an extension providing that the British Parliament can come to some resolution on a deal. And the only deal on the table right now is Theresa May's deal, and that deal does not have any legs to get through Parliament. Let's take a look at the story itself, but that's a decent summary of what's taking place. Theresa May is facing a furious backlash from her own backbenchers and calls for a resignation after she blamed squabbling MPs for delaying Brexit. In a defiant statement on Wednesday night, she told the British public, "I am on your side," and now hopes to force the deal through Parliament next week at the third time of asking. Less than an hour earlier, she had warned in a private meeting with Conservative MPs that her bid to delay leaving could end up losing her even more votes for her own party. "She's going into an ever-narrowed cul-de-sac," said one former minister. They were pissed off by this. Like, pissed off to the point where apparently the anger was open. The people who were leveling abuses at her. It became palpable. Also, this is after pressure sessions, meaning she's been bringing them in sessions trying to pressure the Brexiteers and other members of her party to support the deal, and even still, it's come up with bupkis. The Prime Minister has lost control of the Brexit process. This is deeply embarrassing for a Prime Minister to not have control of her government, but ultimately the Prime Minister, to some degree, has lost control of her government. Tired of MPs talking about nothing else but Brexit when you have real concerns about your children's schools, the National Health Service, knife crime. Now, the wild part about this is Theresa May has damaged the National Health Service in the privatization and to not giving it the funds that's necessary, not to mention the cutting of the police force with regards to the knife crime. So it's amazing that she brings this up. You want the stage of the Brexit process to be over and done with. I agree with you. I'm on your side. It's now time for MPs to decide. The problem with this is the MPs are vested with the interests of the public, meaning they will squabble. And it is the public itself that have put those MPs there with divided interests. It's not the MP's fault. It's the question in itself. The question was always unclear. Let's keep going. Her statement was delayed by more than 20 minutes as she met around 20 MPs in Parliament, many of whom had switched to vote for her Brexit deal at the second vote. One MP described their words as the worst day as a member of this party and said that May had faced unrestrained anger at the meeting, including from party moderates warning against a Brexit delay. Tory sources said David Evanet MP had told May that if she did not resolve the crisis, your time will have come to an end. Fellow MP Nigel Evans also signaled he believed that she should step down. At this point, media is openly asking whether or not the Prime Minister should hand in her resignation. Several MPs, including Stephen Partland and Ben Bradley, said the Prime Minister's request to delay Article 50 had made it actively more difficult for them to back her deal at the next vote. "I've never been in a meeting like it. Its atmosphere was extraordinary," one MP said. "She looked like an Alice in Wonderland when she drank the potion, shrinking in her chair." MPs said they believe May's speech blaming her colleagues for the impasse had been counterproductive. "It might be true, but you don't bloody say it," one former minister said. Another MP accused her of acting like President Trump. Other MPs accused May of irresponsibly stoking public anger against them at a time when MPs already feel under threat. Now again, this could be real or this could be for political hay. It's unclear which, because politicians are somewhat of an untrustworthy bunch. Either way, it is true that there's been anger that's been stoked against them. Whether or not the Prime Minister is kind of making this position or not is unclear. Also, just because you articulate a position doesn't necessarily mean you're at one with trying to solve that position. Meaning, again, just because the Prime Minister articulates the anger of the audience itself, it doesn't make her something separate and distinct from the thing that they're angry at, if that makes sense. Yes, you articulated it. No, you're not going to, to some degree, still part of the process that's causing it. The Wigman MP, Lisa Nandy, one of those Labour MPs who Tory whips were hoping to win over in the next vote, called May's language dangerous and reckless. The Prime Minister would now have to travel to Brussels on Thursday to make the case for a delay, and then intends to make another attempt to ram the twice-defeated deal through the House of Commons. Corbyn accused May of having no plan and embarking on a reckless course. "We're now in the midst of a full-scale national crisis," the Labour leader said. And the Prime Minister faced strongly worded criticism from both sides of her own party. Brexiteers accuse her of betraying the result of the referendum. On the other hand, the former Attorney General Dominic Grieve said, "I have never been more ashamed to be a member of the Conservative Party or to lend her my support." This is not a good day for Theresa May. So I'm going to end this here. This gets across the first story, and 15 minutes is a little bit too long for it, but that's okay. I will be back shortly, immediately after this. So if you guys enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support through PayPal or Patreon, and I'll see you guys momentarily. Thanks all.